So welcome to the last guest lecture of this season. We are ending our series with a bang, I think. And we have the pleasure of hearing the presentation of our Fulbright-funded visiting professor. And this is Dr. Aneta Vasileva, who many of you know already. She is a historian and an architecture critic. She holds a PhD in the theory of architecture, specializing in post-war architecture and preservation of architectural heritage. She teaches at the History and Theory Architecture Department of the University of Architecture and Civil Engineering. And trust me, the name is way too long for me to say the whole thing. So anyway, the University of Architecture and Civil Engineering in Sofia, which happens to be both hers and my hometown. She has been a contributor to the EU program called Atrium, Architecture of Totalitarian Regimes of the 20th Century in Urban Management, to the Trans-European Research Competition Culture in Europe, and most recently, conservation management plans for some of the most prominent buildings that were left in Bulgaria after the collapse of communism. And this particular project was organized and funded by the Getty Foundation. And there is by far more to say about her remarkable bio, but I think we compress it here and we give her the opportunity to share her thoughts with you. All right, thank you so much.
Hello from me as well. It is loud, actually. Okay, so I'm afraid I've changed the topic a little bit. I've added heritage to the headline, but worry not. We shall talk about identity and Bulgarian identity at that, and you will get to know your dean better after this lecture as well. But I will also talk about heritage and about this peculiar mix between past, history, memory, and identity, which form the basis of the so-called contested or dissonant heritage. A topic with never-dying popularity in the present-day much divided society, and I will attack it through the almost completely unknown and very small microarchitecture of a Southeast European country. I have been dealing with the topic of contested heritage for some time, and this is not because I love drama. Well, I do love drama, but because more often than not, the architecture which interests me, which is the architecture of the near past, and in my home country this happens to be the architecture of socialist and post-socialist period, falls within that definition. And it is a lovely topic, dangerous, constantly changing, and perfectly reflecting the times we are living in now and the state of society. And not only Bulgarian society, I mind you. Now Bulgaria. I don't want to show you maps. Well, this is a map, but I don't want to tell you my country through maps, rather through pictures, the opening one, which is the cityscape of Veliko Trnovo, the medieval capital of Bulgaria, which happened to impress even Le Corbusier in 1911, so that he sketched it and included it in his travelogue Journey to the East. Buzluđa, which is probably one of the most famous deserted communist monuments in the Eastern Bloc. And the last picture, I will remain a little bit longer here. In May this year, 2023, the novel Time Shelter of the Bulgarian writer Georgi Gospodinov, translated in English by Angelo Rodel, won the International Booker Prize Award, one of the top novel awards in the world. And this was a cultural blast. A small language winning one of the top literary awards in the world. I will not spoil you the story. Well, this is a captivating story indeed. Suffice to say that Time Shelter is a great novel about the past. How we all somehow now prefer to live in the past and are afraid of the future, of any future. And this is also a captivating novel about Europe, a continent in constant need of future, shared future, which is constantly reinventing its past, and where nostalgia is actually a poison. And nostalgia is one of the key elements in this book as well. So this was a born winner. That's why it took the prize. But speaking about the past, let's get back to heritage. I will start with this. Every heritage is always somebody's heritage and not someone else's heritage. And now I will explain a little bit longer. What you see here is the logo of UNESCO World Heritage Sites, the top level of protection worldwide, the Mount Olympus of heritage protection. And cultural heritage is generally accepted as a common good, which bears universal value, good for the development of human civilization, undisputed, positive, developing, and preserving something from the past for the future generations, connected to primary values and human rights, the right to heritage, as stated in the UNESCO World Heritage Convention from 1972. But can it really be of common importance for everyone, a common good for everyone? Is there such thing as undisputed heritage at all? I'm afraid there is not. And I want to remind you that this lecture is a provocation, and I want to test your limits the way I'm testing mine through this topic. It is not enough to clean Mostar of the Muslims. The relics must also be removed, was the explanation by the Croatian militiaman interviewed in Mostar in September 1993, when asked by a British reporter why he was trying to destroy the over 400-year-old Ottoman bridge there, Stari Most, which was a UNESCO World Heritage Site as well. This is in Bosnia. The Mostar Bridge, subsequently rebuilt in an act of reconciliation, is one of the most iconic symbols of heritage destruction from the war in former Yugoslavia, which resulted, as any war, in thousands of destroyed properties, damaged buildings, historic sites. And it was telling how society in those years, in those circumstances, was existing in opposing identities, different communities clashing and obviously not sharing common heritage. The notion of common heritage, of shared history and human civilization are naturally the first to fall victim in times of war. No matter whether we are on the Balkans or in Syria, where the Islamic State shockingly and live destroyed, for example, many sites in the ancient city of Palmyra, another World Heritage Site actually, another UNESCO World Heritage Site, or in present-day Ukraine. Contested discourses over history and specific heritage have many times fueled physical destruction against traces of somebody else's heritage, somebody else's memories materialized in stone, and have always brought up the topic of contestation. Now, what is theoretically contested heritage? We can find it wherever different actors attribute different contested meanings to traces of the past. There are different levels of dissonance, different aspects, but they always challenge the dominant perception that heritage is positive, that it is generally accepted, that it is comfortable, and shared somehow about including the past. Now, it is somehow accepted that this type of heritage appears at times of war, in places of religious conflicts, in former colonies, in post-socialist countries, wherever societies pass through some kind of transition. But it turned out, and 2020 was the latest example of this, the battle against the monuments of the Confederation, and not only in the US, that the centers, the cultural centers, were not spared as well. Now, I like to show this series of images, which now will follow, to explain what contested heritage is today. You can take them as a series of slaps, even, in the face. This is how a newspaper headline about this type of heritage would look like, loud shout in the media. So you can take them also as a series of headlines. Political dissonance. Here you see Auschwitz. Political dissonance. Palazzo della Civiltà Italiana of Mussolini. The remnants of the Cold War. The defaced statue of Leopold II in Belgium, known for his atrocities in Belgian Congo. The statue of General Lee in Virginia. Or the memorial place of the Soviet Army in the Eastern Bloc. This is Sofia, 2017, this picture especially. Then we have the socially and economically contested heritage. Here undoubtedly fall all utopian efforts of modernism, especially post-war modernism, to make lives better and people happier. Post-war housing projects, prefabs, microrayons, brutalist blocks, East European panelki, Plattenbau, they all embody the contested traces of post-war mass modernization. Here, architectural contestation is usually linked with economic interests, with the forces of the market, new and cheaper construction, appetites for increased density, moving of people, more profits, privatization of land and different types of areas, social housing terrains, free market-based solutions to housing crisis. We can also define aesthetically contested heritage, which for one reason or no other has been defined as ugly. For example, the love and hate relationship of society with brutalism, with bare concrete, the never-ending story of appreciation of brutalism in every corner of the world. We can also add a number of present-day urgent problems. For example, how do we preserve and conserve bare concrete today in a situation of climate crisis? Concrete accounts for the largest part of carbon emissions in the construction industry. What would be the future of all those buildings, symbols of 20th century architecture in the future? In Bulgaria, politically burdened contestation was strongest in the 90s, in the transition period. But here as well, more and more often than not, the political played equal part with the economic, with the aesthetic, with the social, with many complicated cultural factors. And nowadays, it seems that it is much more diverse and reflecting present-day problems of Bulgarian society, which are becoming more and more distant from the old dramas of the Cold War and more shared within the whole of the European continent and forming European identity today, actually. Now to sum up. All heritage is uncomfortable to someone. Telling multiple stories, having multiple pasts, inevitably brings up the multiple identities and multiple heritages in plural. Now I want to check your own level of comfort with these three examples from Bulgaria, from Bulgarian socialist past. Dimitrovgrad is the first city in Bulgaria, brand new city, 20th century city, built almost entirely from scratch after the Second World War as a result of the brigades movement, voluntary builders arriving there in thousands, young volunteers, to build a new socialist future for the country and a new town to host this future. Many of them, nearly 15,000, remained to live there and form the core population of the town. The town is also a prime example of socialist realism as architectural style. A centrally located boulevard axis, which is flanked by 5 6-story buildings and formally outlined with neoclassical, eclectical, decorative facades typical for the Stalinist period of socialist realism. They formed closed, peripherally built blocks with angular buildings flanked by towers. You saw the towers, and with ground floors enriched with covered arcades. This is the official face of the city. And this is the face which in 2007 was listed as a cultural heritage, the first socialist ensemble in Bulgaria to be awarded with this status, a heritage of national importance. It was a result of a big campaign for Dimitrovgrad to be listed, supported both by architects, urbanists, journalists, and researchers, and also by Dimitrovgrad's own citizens and authorities and municipality. So in November 2010, 3 sites in Dimitrovgrad, I'm showing you only one of them, the central part, were declared cultural property of national significance. And thus, as I said, Dimitrovgrad became the first socialist, brand new city of Bulgaria from the period of socialism with heritage label. Yet socialist architecture is only one of the 3, at least 3, overwhelming identities of the city, and 2 of them are definitely post-socialist. Dimitrovgrad is indeed the young socialist city of the future, city of the volunteers, of the dreams, but it is also the place with the biggest open-air market in Bulgaria, some say even on the Balkans. Nedelyan, the so-called Nedelyan or Sunday market, gradually, it's some kind of an open-air bazaar, gradually started to develop in the late 80s and exploded in the 90s as an ad hoc informal place for all kinds of formal and informal, including trading activities. At the same time, with the steady decline of industry, because Dimitrovgrad was a heavy industry town during socialism, but in post-socialism this was declining, so the market was the place providing for the living of many of Dimitrovgrad's citizens. But Dimitrovgrad is something else as well. It is also the symbol of Chalga, this peculiar mix of Oriental pop-folk motifs accumulated increasing popularities in the 90s, starting from the 80s, in the 90s, and became notorious for mass culture. Some kind of guilty pleasure which every Balkan country enjoys, and if it counts itself from the elite circles, is ashamed of at the same time. So this is extremely popular, low culture. And Dimitrovgrad is Bulgarian's capital of Chalga, with the biggest record company, Planeta Pioneer, functioning there, actually in a reconstructed former socialist cinema, in this very same ensemble with heritage status in the center of the city. What is Chalga? was an epitome of Chauga, but this was also a very inclusive clip, which was shot, video, which was shot by Planeta Pioneer in a gypsy neighborhood, including many identities, not only of Dimitrovgrad, but of Bulgarian post-socialist culture, actually. And what makes Dimitrovgrad intriguing is exactly this ability to combine the shameful and the glorious from the past and the present, and in such way to stand apart from almost any other Bulgarian city. Now, whose heritage is protected in Dimitrovgrad is my question. It is a city with many faces, all of them contested. Socialism is contested, Chauga is contested, the informal market is contested, but only one of them is officially protected as heritage. Another example, the notorious Sunny Beach Resort on the Black Sea coast of Bulgaria, a modernist paradise started to be built in late 50s and 60s of the 20th century, a product of long-term central planned state policy for developing of mass tourism in a socialist country, and a prime example of post-war modernism. Perfect example. Several postcards from the past is how I call those slides. They are from the archives of the Bulgarian Telecommunication Agency, and they're beautiful photos from this long-gone era. And I will accompany them with several words from different articles from the New York Times from the 60s. When Bulgarians started building Golden Sands and Sunny Beach 6 years ago, they first explored all the major resorts on the French Riviera, the Spanish Costa Brava, the Italian Adriatic coast, and Miami Beach. Their goal was to copy the good and avoid the bad. They have built small resorts separated by large spaces and pristine beaches. What happened after 1989, however? The post-war modernist paradise turned into a symbol of the unregulated neoliberal market, an overbuilt area with chaos of architectural styles with one main function, entertainment, and with notably low comfort of living. You can see here the difference. It is changing, right? Okay, the difference in the volume of built-up area between the two periods, the socialism, low density, and the post-socialism. And the buildings from before 1989 were placed in radically different contexts. Some of them were completely changed. You see a before and after photos here. With new volumes added, some of them were destroyed and substituted by other volumes. Others had only their facade elements replaced. No authentic image of any of those buildings is fully preserved today. And those which come closest to their original image have lost their environment completely, which has shaped their contemporary allure, so to say, in completely different situation. No more symbiosis between nature and architecture. Bulgarian architects, in this case, are tantalizingly divided, because some of them are designing the metastasis of the new resort, while others are mourning for the suffering bitterly for the lost modernist paradise. It is somehow indecent to even try to look for any architectural value in Sunny Beach today. The general consensus is rather towards outrage for the ruined environment, nostalgia for the resort, the modernist long-gone resort, sadness over the loss of identity and priceless cultural traces. Everything new is defined as kitsch and Chauga. At the same time, Sunny Beach continues to be a thriving resort, and even more so, a constantly changing resort. While before the standard was okay, Costa Brava, the Spanish, or today it's probably more Las Vegas. As a result, we got a collage pop place, gathering enthusiastic party, investments, and quiet nostalgia on the fringes, which makes it, for me, again, like Dimitrovgrad, an extremely interesting place. And this was also our starting point when in the fall of 2020, my graduate student Joanna Koleva and I started a small research project based especially on the case study of Sunny Beach. Not just to show that Sunny Beach today is fun and worthwhile, but that it has architectural value as well. Why not value as pop cultural heritage, far beyond its fixed modernist image of some kind of long-gone paradise. Okay, so Sunny Beach can be anything we try to prove. There can be discos, skyscrapers, two seas. It can grow endlessly as well. Now, here is another dissonant question. Isn't it high time to think whether or how we can preserve not only the high, but also the low architectural heritage? Not only the architecture that makes us feel good, but also the one which makes us angry, of which we are ashamed, which is simply invisible and blunt, and this is a slide intentionally left black. Don't we need listed chaos and kitsch and chauva? What would be the strategies for the development of such special places, territories which have to be conserved in completely different circumstances, under different standards, the pop places of our time? And isn't Sunny Beach actually the ultimate pop cultural icon of contemporary Bulgarian architecture? Of course, remind you, this is a provocation. But I was testing our own Bulgarian limits, and now I'm testing your limits. How far can you take the notion of contested heritage? It's not only war. Here is one more postcard, and my third and last example. The former memorial house of the Bulgarian Communist Party on Mount Buzluja, in the middle of Bulgaria, on the mountain top. Buzluja is a special piece of architecture. It is both a building, sculpture, and a memorial. Built for the 80th anniversary of the Bulgarian Communist Party and for the 1300th anniversary of the Bulgarian state, enthusiastically celebrated by the Bulgarian socialist state. So this is both a communist and a nationalist monument. Everything started with the blast, the one you see in 1973. The peak was leveled and work began. More than 6,000 people participated in the construction. Extremely complicated building is this one, and built under very harsh weather conditions on one very difficult peak. Plus, it had thousands of square feet of richly detailed mosaics and a lot of other art. You can see here archive photos in its prime, with the outer ring corridor of the Grand Hall and its mosaics, and the Grand Hall itself. 1981. These photos are from this year, and this is the year of the official opening of the memorial, which took place in August. Of course, the public reaction back then was enthusiastic. People were waiting in lines to enter the newly built memorial. And for more than a year after its opening, it had been working daily all the year round. Buzluja was a collective effort. That's how society took it. That's how it was supposed to take it. Therefore, it was an immense pride, and it was supposed to be an immense pride of the nation and once-in-a-lifetime experience to go there, to be chosen to attend some of the events there. And this was only for 8 years. In 1989, everything changed. The former temple of communism was abandoned, looted, and since then has been residing in this picturesque state of dereliction, one of the favorite spaceship structures, I'm quoting, of late communism. Buzluđa is the subject nowadays of many books, articles, researches, projects, photo albums, and often techie pop culture, just very similar to the fate of Yugoslavian spomenik. It is an all-time urbex tourism favorite. It has been featured even in Hollywood movies, in fashion photo shoots and ads, even in the set design of the 2019 Stagicon Frankenstein, no other than Frankenstein opera in Brussels. Buzluđa is contested heritage par excellence. The heavy ideological burden of the memorial house is the main reason for its fate after 1989. And denial is a particular state of mind when talking about this building. It goes like this, and I will quote something. Buzluđa should be treated not only as an architectural achievement, this is a quote, and not as a communist memorial. The process of listing and accepting the monument as a heritage site is best accompanied by a depoliticized narrative. It is presumed by many organizations that this is the road to successful preservation of any contested site, but this is impossible. At the end of 2018, Buzluđa monument was included in the list of the 7 most endangered sites according to Europa Nostra, which is a pan-European federation of non-governmental organizations in the field of cultural heritage. So an EU commission visited the monument and formulated the so-called action plan for conservation and future development of the site. And it was closely followed in 2019 by the American Getty Foundation, which included Buzluđa in its Keeping It Modern program and funded a conservation and management plan, a CMP, a Buzluđa monument, and in 2020 provided additional grant for the urgent conservation works of the mosaics, which are many and exquisite. I was part of this project, the CMP and the follow-up, and we made a lot of analysis and identified various values, but one stood out. Buzluđa is culturally significant, not despite, but because its peculiar and multi-layered dissonance. The 2 periods, just like in Sunny Beach or in Dimitrovgrad, provide for 2 equally important pieces of cultural knowledge about the consecutive eras of socialism and post-socialism in Bulgarian history. Their extremes are especially well documented on this exact place. In the monument's images before and after the fall of the Berlin Wall. The specific double coding, as we called it, grants, in our view, high historical and cognitive significance of the monument as a double document. In this way, we try to prove dissonance as cultural value. This was not done before. This famous graffiti stood at the entrance of Buzluđa monument till mid-2010s, if I'm not mistaken, and it was used as a cover of a very popular photo book of the Bulgarian photographer Nikola Mihov, bearing the same title, Forget Your Past. And this graffiti told many things about memory, identity, the past and the present, all the things we are talking about today. Later on, the graffiti was painted over and then rewritten as a much more direct message, if you ask me, missing the subtlety of the original one. So, we might argue that dissonance is a condition active or latent to all heritage, right? Then don't we all have the right to our own uncomfortable, troublesome, thought-provoking, not universal, according to UNESCO, and not comforting heritage, the right to our own contested heritage? I will finish with a story. One day, in an Istanbul pub, gathered friends from different Balkan countries. A Greek, a Macedonian, a Turk, a Serb, and a Bulgarian. This is how the film Whose Is This Song from 2003 of the Bulgarian director Adela Peyeva begins. This is her storytelling. There, she says, in that Istanbul pub, I heard the song I want to tell you about. As soon as we heard the song, we all started arguing in different languages. And each one of us claimed that this song was from his side, from his country. And that we had a terrible fight because everybody claimed the song. The film was shot several years after the end of the wars in Yugoslavia, in former Yugoslavia, and tells, yes, you got it, about a song with different names. In some countries, this is a love song. In others, a religious Muslim march. In Bulgaria, this is a hymn of Stranja, a small mountain in southeastern Bulgaria, and the struggles, a hymn of the struggles for national liberation in the 19th century. All the Balkan countries claim this song as theirs, and theirs only. Nobody else's. But this is common. It is shared. A shared heritage, just like the architecture in Bursa or in Plovdiv. With this, I thank you, asking whether this is a Croatian song as well, and I'm open for your questions. Thank you.
So I thank you for the extended presentation. I've never heard about this song, so I don't think it's Croatian, to my knowledge.
Only Bosnian and Serbian and Albanian.
I'll leave it to them. I'm curious about the international examples. So when you choose them, how do you choose the narrative that you want to say?
The ones which are most often placed as examples of dissonant heritage in the Anglo-Saxon academic research, which usually does not include the more subtle and multi-layered post-socialist, but probably post-colonial and many other small peripheral examples. Monster is a very usual and very often cited example, as is Palmyra. Yep.
You mentioned that one of the projects you're trying is to prove dissidents as cultural. Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean by that phrase?
Can you just repeat the first part of the first sentence?
You talked about a project that tried to prove dissidents as cultural.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explore that phrase a little bit more? What that project may look like?
The project about Buzluđa. That was the Getty Foundation Conservation and Management Plan. And first, when a foreigner or any people goes to a derelict place and sees all those colorful, golden, wonderful mosaics fallen in the ground, and they say, we have to preserve it in its former glory, in its former beauty, and this is where its cultural significance should be looked for, in the 80s, for example. But it is in this state for more years than it has been in its glorious years. And now people are flocking to Bulgaria to see Buzluđa exactly because it is a ruin, not because it is a communist temple. That's why we talked and talked a lot and managed to convince this whole international community, research community, that we should define dissonance as the prime cultural value of Buzluđa exactly because it cannot be told with only one of the story. And in my opinion, this, in our times, should be or is the healthy attitude to anything. There is never one side of any story, just as there is not, as I'm trying to prove, indisputable heritage. Every monument to any battle, somebody has lost this battle. So this monument is not a heritage or monument or anything to the loser. And it is always like that. That's the thinking behind this. Yep.
Thank you for the talk. To follow up on that, what were the practical outcomes of this idea of preserving dissidents, especially in terms of that memorial? Are you advocating to preserve some of it, restore some of it?
Yes. We're advocating that the future actions to be taken, including really conservation and preservation actions, should exhibit both states. So if we restore some place, we should keep and preserve the destruction as well, and preserve the contrast, kind of preserve and conserve the ruin with some kind of recreation of the past, but it might be virtual, it might be just partial, and this has now been developed as part of the conservation management plan, and it should be out in several months, I think, on the Getty site. So you will read for yourselves, I can send you a link. It's still under development, but it should be on the site shortly. Yes? Mm-hmm. In a what? Uh-huh.
We know UNESCO started at a certain specific notion with the Egyptian protection of the Egyptian dam, the royal sense. It started with that. It's a very Eurocentric. And till date, it is quite a Eurocentric approach. But it is changing, no doubt about it. It has several
understand, and it is a very good question. And the answer is revolutionary. We have to change UNESCO's criteria. They haven't been changed for half a century. And UNESCO is more and more contested as a universal global force. I think that USA withdrew from UNESCO. I didn't think that they might return, but there is somebody always going in and out of UNESCO because UNESCO stays fixed in the 70s and society is changing. That's the answer.
Universal heritage.
Yes.
What's universal about universal?
It was universal in the post-war era. They had to build peace and to build the global community. They needed those institutions and those universal values. But what is this prime title of UNESCO? Universal values. Undisputed universal value. I don't think we have one now. How can we find one now? Yeah. Always.
I'm just wondering if you would even argue that the importance of cultural heritage is, or do you believe that cultural heritage is important as universal?
I already.
So this, so you're like universal, nothing is universal.
Mhm.
Do you think that the notion, the idea, the philosophy that cultural heritage is important across all?
That should be changed? Do I think
No,
so?
do you believe that that's even true?
No, I don't anymore. And I think that any event happening in any cultural sphere nowadays proves me right, actually. Unfortunately.
I was wondering though, with cultural sites being some of the first to be attacked, if that was an indicator of its universal importance, that we might not agree, we might have contested ideas about cultural heritage, but we know we don't like it, your cultural heritage, but we know it's important to you, so we're going to attack it and take it.
Yeah, you have a point here. But I don't think this is because they take it as heritage. They attack it because they take it as a representation of the identity of the enemy. And they have to destroy the memories and the identity of the memory. They don't give a damn about UNESCO and the heritage site, I think. But that's the reason why the Taliban destroyed the statues of Buddha. Not because of UNESCO, I think. They just wanted to have revenge in a way. Anybody else?
I'm just curious. So, I wonder if something is not contested, is it better than if it's contested by many? It almost seems like the more contested, the more worth salvation. It reverses the whole. Many people must claim it. It must be important to many, although they disagree why it's important.
The question is, do we need to keep the places which make us disagree so that we remember that we are different persons and are entitled to disagree? Just like the Soviet monuments or the monuments of the colonial period. I don't know. This was a tough question. This is a tough question now, and it was a tough question a couple of years ago with the Black Lives Matter movement. Do we have to take down all those slavers' statues down? What are we doing with them? And that article, which appeared in The Guardian with the telling title, "All statues must come down." This is the answer. Either we keep the contestation and embrace it, or we take everything down. I don't know. But it is interesting to live in diverse times. So, coming from a former socialist country where only one narrative was permitted, now I embrace gladly multiple narratives in anything. Okay.
Other question?
Yep. The period of socialism? They don't want to preserve it because they are ashamed of their socialist past. And about post-socialism, don't even start thinking about preserving because they're double ashamed of this. So it's,
Nothing can be preserved because the present is to be embarrassed by. The
Yeah.
recent past is to also be embarrassed
Yes.
by, so we gotta be keeping the monuments from like at least 200 years ago.
yes.
There's
And-
nothing in present history appears to meet
But
the standard.
1,000 years ago, the monuments, they're contested by our fellow lovely Balkan neighbors, and there is always contestation in any period.
That's it, you can't get out of it.
No.
It's a rhythm. Other questions?
Okay,
I think we're-
thank you.